Imagine the shock when a stranger, a Karen no less, brazenly demanded that I give her my daughter because her own child was disabled. It was a sunny Saturday, a day that was supposed to be filled with laughter and joy at the local park. Little did I know that Karen will try to kidnap my daughter cause her kid is disabled. Here's how it all went down. The day started like any other sunny Saturday, with a clear blue sky and a gentle breeze that promised a perfect afternoon at the local park. My daughter Lily had been looking forward to playing on the swings and slides all week, her excitement palpable as we packed a small picnic and set off, unaware of the unsettling encounter that awaited us. Upon our arrival, the park was alive with the sounds of laughter and the sight of families enjoying the day. Lily wasted no time dashing towards the playground with a joy that only a child can embody. I found a spot nearby, where I could keep a watchful eye on her while enjoying the peaceful outdoor setting. That's when I first noticed her, Karen. She sat alone on a bench, her gaze intensely fixed on the playground, or more specifically, on Lily. Something about her stare sent a shiver down my spine, but I brushed it off as mere overprotectiveness. It wasn't long before Karen approached us. Her steps were deliberate, her eyes never wavering from Lily. "Your daughter," she began, her voice carrying a strange mix of desperation and entitlement. "She would be perfect for my son." I was taken aback by her forwardness. "I'm sorry, what do you mean?" I asked, puzzled. "My son is disabled," Karen explained, her voice gaining intensity. "He needs a sister like yours. You should give her to me." The absurdity of her request left me speechless. How could a stranger demand such a thing? "That's not possible," I managed to say, hoping to end the conversation there. But Karen was undeterred. "You don't understand. My child suffers every day. Your daughter could make his life worth living. It's only fair." The situation escalated when Karen attempted to physically take Lily, claiming it was her right to do so because her child's disability somehow justified her actions. I quickly placed myself between Karen and my daughter, my heart pounding in my chest. "Look, Karen," I said, struggling to maintain my composure. "You can't just take someone else's child no matter the circumstances." But Karen was relentless. "Give me your kid!" she screamed, attracting the attention of everyone nearby. "My child's needs are greater than yours." Panic set in as I realized this was no mere confrontation. It was an attempted kidnapping. I yelled for help, and to my relief, several parents and bystanders rushed to our side, forming a protective circle around us. The arrival of park security and the police brought some semblance of order to the chaos. Karen was still shouting, her words a jumbled mess of entitlement and accusations, as the officers led her away. The crowd that had formed was in disbelief, their murmurs reflecting their shock at the entitlement Karen displayed. I held Lily close, grateful for her safety but deeply disturbed by the ordeal. The police were thorough, taking statements and informing me that Karen had a history of similar incidents driven by her refusal to accept her child's disability and a misguided belief that society owed her compensation for her struggles. The incident at the park was a sobering reminder of the unpredictability of human behavior and the lengths to which some individuals will go, driven by their own pain and desperation. Karen's actions, though motivated by love for her child, were a stark violation of societal norms and personal boundaries. The entitlement she displayed, demanding another's child as compensation for her own child's disability, was not only shocking, but deeply troubling. In the days that followed, Lily and I found solace in each other's company, spending time together at home, away from the public eye. The world seemed a bit darker, a bit more unpredictable, but our bond remained unshaken. The story of Karen, while extreme, serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of entitlement and the importance of respecting the autonomy and rights of others. It's a reminder that while compassion and empathy are vital, they must never overstep the boundaries of respect and decency. Wow, this story is absolutely wild. I can't believe the audacity of that Karen. No one has the right to demand someone else's child, no matter what the situation. Big kudos to the parents and bystanders at the park for stepping in and protecting Lily. Remember, folks, always respect each other's boundaries, even when times are tough. My wife, Eliza, and I just got married, but our honeymoon has been anything but blissful. My best friend, Ailey, spilled wine on Eliza's dress during our wedding, and now Eliza is demanding that I cut ties with Ailey. I'm caught in a whirlwind of emotions, torn between my wife and my best friend. Here's how it all went down. Ailey and I met through a mutual friend in 2012 during a trivia night at university. I was quite attracted to her and actually told her so at the end of the evening, but she told me she had a boyfriend even though she was flattered all the same. Fast forward 3 years later, I meet Eliza at the Edinburgh Fringe and we just clicked immediately. Politics, music, film, whatever the subject approached, there was a spark that I'd never felt with anyone else. Like she just made sense with me. Her personality was just vivid. It's hard to describe, but I'll try. On first impression, she was so knowledgeable and enthusiastic. I was taken aback by her intensity. From that point onwards, we were inseparable, and I was dead certain of our future together long before we got engaged. Enter Ailey again. I start a new job at an advertising firm with a position in web design, and she was one of the only people I knew. At first it was a little awkward given our history, especially considering that she was now married to the boyfriend she was dating back then. But there was no one else I knew at the firm, and we both had partners at this point. So it couldn't hurt to be friends, right? And to be honest, I'm glad, because I feel like our chemistry as friends superseded any potential we might have had as a couple. She's clever and has a bit of a cheeky personality. I'm quite dry and sarcastic myself, so I reckon we have a pretty fun dynamic. Eliza doesn't seem to feel that way though. Sometimes when it's been the three of us, she has expressed a feeling of being left out, or that Ailey has been making fun of her. I don't see it. It's just our dynamic. But there have been a couple of nights where Eliza's been in tears because of something that Ailey has said. One time Eliza got out of her seat and Ailey sat down where she was sitting to show me a video on YouTube. When Eliza came back in, she saw Ailey leaning next to me and was upset for the rest of the night. Sometimes there have been times when Ailey has said something that Eliza has read as a come on. Like when I said I missed swimming because I felt out of shape, Ailey said the two of us should go together, with a playful punch. Eliza didn't say anything at the time, but her discomfort was visible. Things really came to a head though on our wedding, and I think the stress of it really got to Eliza. During the reception, Ailey bumped into her and red wine spilled all over her dress. She was crying the entire evening. We're now on our honeymoon, and Eliza has said she hopes for a fresh start, but she feels like Ailey might have spilled her wine on purpose. She's suggesting that I cut ties with her, and if I'm honest, I'm not so sure I want to. Where do I go from here? I have been completely inconsiderate of Eliza's feelings and how she feels about these roastings, and you alerted me to the possibility that Ailey is doing this just to be a little troublemaker. I sat down with Eliza, and we had an in-depth conversation about the wedding incident. I got her to describe the event step by step in her own words. I was leaving the lobby heading towards the dining venue, and Ailey was a little tipsy at this point and already stumbling from the bar. She was initially walking slower, but seemed to speed up when she saw me. We collided into each other and she pulled a regretful face and made a joke about me looking like Rosamund Pike in Gone Girl before hurrying away. She seemed embarrassed in the moment, but she didn't apologize to me. I heard from other people that she was appalled about what happened, but I never heard anything from her directly. It just paints a picture of habitual minor aggressions from her that has festered into this ugly anxiety whenever she's around. I pretty much predict whenever I'm in her vicinity, there will be weird behavior or uncomfortable comments, and I don't want to continue being in a situation where my husband brings someone into my home who resents me simply for existing. That was a real gut punch to me. For me, I always felt like it was just insecurity about me being attracted to Ailey for 10 minutes years ago, but Eliza is really torn up about this. She said that the honeymoon has been miserable because the memory has been swirling around in her mind and she feels like I'm going to downplay or dismiss it. No one should feel like they can't just be themselves, especially not at home. I didn't realize what a jerk I'd been, and I apologized profusely to Eliza and decided to phone up Ailey to confront her about the wedding incident. So I did, and it didn't go well. Basically, I told her that Eliza was really hurt by the wedding dress incident, that she had been hurt by her behavior for a long time, and that if she can't bring herself to apologize to Eliza's face, at least she should contribute towards getting the stain removed. And if she couldn't bring herself to even do that, then our friendship had to stop. To say that Ailey was shocked would be an understatement. She was completely caught off guard, asking what was wrong with their interactions that made me want to go to such extremes. I mentioned the leapfrog comment and she went, "But even you call her that," stating that Eliza called her Garfield because of her weight and bright orange hair. When I mentioned that she ran towards Eliza and didn't apologize for spilling wine on her, she got really upset and started shouting that she wasn't running at her to throw wine at her dress. She was running from her because she didn't want to talk at that moment because she feels like Eliza dislikes her and she doesn't know how to address it. She started pointing out times when Eliza had been funny towards her, and I basically said, "Right, but this isn't about when Eliza has hurt you. This is about when you've hurt Eliza and it's got so bad that it needs to be talked about." And she started laughing. It was really uncomfortable. I know she does this when she's anxious about something. Eliza asked me if things were okay from the other room, and Ailey demanded if this was set up, and when I tried to explain myself, she hung up. Her husband even phoned me, insisting that he would pay for the damage if it is less stressful for me. I told Ewan, husband, that I appreciated that, but I needed to know where Ailey stood regarding what I just said. Ewan told me that Ailey makes jokes whenever she's anxious or uncomfortable, and that they've argued about it in the past. But the wedding dress incident is a major issue and that he wants to smooth things over as much as I do. So him and Ailey will pay towards dry cleaning, whilst a condolences hamper is sent to Eliza. Eliza was relieved that Ewan was so understanding, but she wasn't thrilled about Ailey's reaction. basically said that the Garfield comment was always about her hair and never about her weight, and that she was deliberately trying to make it seem like the bad behavior went both ways. I don't think it's went both ways either, cause I've never noticed Eliza roasting Ailey in any real way. Eliza has suggested we try marriage counseling. I was a bit shocked at first because we've only been married a month, but I decided maybe that's the way forward because if Eliza reckons that we need counseling for it, then it's clearly a problem. So yeah, Eliza and I are going to try marriage counseling and my future with Ailey is uncertain. This is a complicated situation that is clearly causing distress to all parties involved. The main takeaway here is the importance of clear communication and setting boundaries. It's obvious that the relationship between Ailey and Eliza has been fraught with tension and misunderstandings. The decision to try marriage counseling is a positive step towards resolving these issues and strengthening the bond between the newlyweds. As for the friendship with Ailey, it's crucial to consider Eliza's feelings moving forward and to ensure that any interactions are respectful and considerate of her. Never did I think that moving into a new apartment would lead to such an intense feud with my downstairs neighbor. I was just trying to live my life quietly, but it seemed like every action I made was too loud for him. It felt like I was living in a suspense novel, one where my neighbor didn't want me to make any noise in my own home. Here's how it all went down. A new person moved in below me sometime in December. I, a 23-year-old woman, was away for most of December, so I wasn't aware until I returned home from celebrating the holidays. On my first night back, I had a friend spending the night whom I'll call Clara. We weren't being excessively noisy, but we were conversing and catching up. Clara went to her car to retrieve something, and an elderly man stopped to talk to her, whom I'll call Richard. Richard asked her if we were hosting a party. Clara denied it. He then mentioned that he kept hearing loud banging sounds and that we needed to be more considerate of the people living below us. Fine. When Clara returned, she related the incident to me and asked if I'd spoken to Richard before. I told her I hadn't. Not long after, Richard knocked on the door. For some context, I have neurodivergent traits. An unfamiliar man persistently knocking on my door late at night really unnerved me. I was also dressed in pajamas. Due to this, Clara agreed to converse with him on my behalf, for which I was grateful. Richard expressed his frustration to Clara. He said he'd been hearing banging sounds for weeks since he moved in. He keeps hearing weights dropping. I don't lift weights. He hears things drop at midnight and 2 a.m. He even claimed he could hear whenever I flushed the toilet, which seemed rather intrusive. Moreover, I hadn't been home in weeks. At one point during the conversation, my cat tried to escape and I had to run to grab him. This will be important later. Richard left me alone for the past 2 weeks, though sometimes at night while in bed I would hear banging on the walls or floor. Unfortunately, he came back tonight. I decided I was going to tell him once and for all that I wasn't making noise. It didn't go well. I tried telling him that I'm not the one making noise. He said, "Yes, you are. I hear sound, then I see you leave in the morning, then I hear sound again when I see you come home. You drive, type of car and color, right? What in the world?" Okay, he's now admitted to watching me, and he knows which car is mine. And I honestly do not know what he is hearing in the morning other than me walking and putting on shoes. I'm not an early riser. I sleep as late as I can, then wake up, get dressed and leave. I'm not doing morning workouts. He also tried to catch me in a gotcha moment. He said, "Last time I was here, your lady friend said you couldn't come to the door because you weren't dressed, but I saw you come grab your cat." Yes, sir. She was correct. I was wearing pajamas, not clothing I wanted you to see me in. He kept going on about constant banging, saying he needed to be awake at 4 a.m. for dialysis and that he needed sleep. Then he finally left after saying he's not trying to be a jerk. I'm at a loss. I don't know what banging sounds he's talking about other than me walking. And complaining about me flushing the toilet? Seriously? My cat is 18 pounds, not obese, just massive frame, and he runs and jumps around when he gets zoomies, so I wonder if he's hearing him. Regardless, the apartment allows pets, and Thunder is an emotional support animal. I should be allowed to walk around in my own apartment and flush my toilet without worrying I'll annoy someone off. I will no longer answer the door if he shows up, but unfortunately, he's admitted to watching me so he knows my schedule. If you don't want to put up with footsteps, animals, and toilet flushing, you should not move into a pet-friendly apartment complex. I contacted the office and informed them about the situation. They told me they were going to call him and tell him not to interact with me and to make any complaints through them. At first, this seemed to improve things. However, he unfortunately decided to start hitting the ceiling whenever he felt I was being too loud. Initially, it wasn't that bad. A couple of random smacks that were easy enough to ignore occurred when I was laying in bed. However, last night, things escalated. It was around 10:11 p.m. I was walking around my apartment a bit because I had a faulty cord, and I was trying to find a different cord to replace it. He started hitting the ceiling again. I ignored it, but he kept doing it, and it was gradually getting more aggressive. It was starting to unnerve me. At this point, I wasn't even moving anymore. I was just sitting at my desk, Then he got upset and forcefully punched the ceiling. I think I counted 7 times in a row. It was bad enough to make the place shake. I was really scared at this point, so I did what my mom and most of the people on Reddit suggested. I called the police. Unfortunately, they weren't very helpful. Here is how the conversation went. The cop asked, "Has he threatened you in any way?" I replied, "No, not directly. He's been told to not knock on my door and now he's being really aggressive with hitting the ceiling." The cop responded, "I can't do anything if a crime has not been committed." I retorted, "The ceiling hitting is really scaring me and he's admitted to watching me leave and come back before." The cop explained, "Things like this are part of apartment living. Him watching you was likely just him trying to figure out the source of the noise. I can talk to him if you want, but at that point he will know you called the police and that might make things worse off for you. I'm not saying you are making noise, but I've had to speak to my upstairs neighbors before too. You don't live below anyone, so it can be hard to understand." I interjected, "I do live below someone too, and I hear noises sometime." The cop cut me off saying, "Then you know what it's like." I clarified, "No, they make sound but it isn't bad, and I just ignore it." The cop reiterated, "Like I said, I've had to speak to neighbors before too." Frustrated, I snapped, "Yeah, but your neighbors were probably actually making noise." At this point, I started to cry. I was really stressed and trying as hard as I could to keep it together to speak. The cop sympathized. "I know things like this can be frustrating. I can talk to him if you want." I refuted, "No, you just told me that would be a bad idea." The cop denied, "I never said that." At that point, I simply wanted the police officer to leave. I asked him to depart but made sure to express that I felt unsafe in my own home. I reached out to the office again this morning and had quite an interesting discussion. They confirmed that they had spoken to him and instructed him to voice any complaints through them instead of approaching me directly. They also mentioned that his observation of me leaving was not intended to make me feel threatened. He had not planned to follow me but merely mentioned it when I claimed I wasn't home during his noise complaints. I informed the office that he had been complaining about noise when I wasn't even present. I had been away for at least half of December. Surprisingly, he had told them I had a friend over who was likely the source of the noise. I was flabbergasted. Clara had only been there for one night. It seems he is concocting stories to justify his complaints. The office is attempting to mediate this situation, which is understandable but frustrating, as I know I'm not responsible for any loud noises. I shared my theory with the office, suggesting that the heating system might be causing the loud banging noises. It's plausible that the heat is more likely to kick in when I enter the building and let in cold air. However, correlation does not imply causation. The silver lining is that he is not permitted to bang on the ceiling as he has been. The office will instruct him to stop, and if he continues, I will report him each time. I will also keep a log of all incidents. I apologize if this update isn't as satisfying as you'd hoped. I'm exhausted and shaken, and the police department hasn't been much help. Feeling this isolated is tough. I understand everyone's attempts to remain impartial, but it leaves me feeling defeated, as if no one believes me. Update. I started writing this yesterday, and in the time it took me to finish, he banged on the ceiling again, despite the landlord's warning. I called the office again, and they assured me they would take action, though they didn't specify what. This is a stressful situation for anyone, and it's clear that the OP is trying to navigate it as best as they can. It's a reminder of the complexities of living in close quarters with others, where noise and other disturbances can create tension. The OP's patience and attempts to resolve the situation are commendable. However, it is also clear that more decisive action may be required if the situation continues to escalate. On our first date anniversary, my boyfriend made plans with his friends, including one who had openly expressed deep feelings for him. The night ended with him and this friend Dave, alone together until 4 a.m. I was left feeling disrespected and unsure about our future. Here's how it all went down. Firstly, I want to make clear that this issue resulted as a mistake on both ends. So my 26-year-old female boyfriend, 25-year-old male, made plans with his friends this week on our first date anniversary. This would be the first time celebrating any anniversary between us, and we had spoken about it for a while. We both kept getting confused about the days as we have both been extremely busy at work, though we knew throughout this month that it was coming. Before I realized the specific day our anniversary landed on, he had told me about his plans since he wouldn't be able to see me that day. Our work schedules don't often align, so he always runs it by me if he has plans on a day he's off, in case one of us is expecting to meet after work, and vice versa. Since I didn't put it together that his plans coincided with our anniversary, I told him it was all right and was really enthusiastic about him going. The problem is that today the penny dropped, and I realized that we made a mistake. I know it sounds silly, but I feel really upset about this. It is our first anniversary and it just feels like such a shame to miss it. There's also a part of me that is slightly upset he even made plans on that day, which I know is irrational and hypocritical, seeing as I got muddled up too. But I guess it's just me wishing that he had kept it in mind, even if I wasn't aware. I know that's not fair, but I'm just being honest. I'm unsure whether this is something I should or could bring up to him. I feel like I definitely can't ask him to cancel his plans, given that I already said I don't mind and he has already committed to his friends. I did tell him today that our anniversary falls on that specific day, but he didn't say anything about us not being together to celebrate. A part of me was hoping he'd offer to cancel. I'm considering asking my work if I can take the day off since it's his day off too, and that maybe we can do something before or after his plans, but in the past, he's been very against seeing me when he's already made plans. I'm not sure if there's even advice anyone could give me. I know we could celebrate on another day, and that we will have more anniversaries in the future, but it just feels very sad that we messed this first one up. Should I tell him how upset I am, or would that simply cause unnecessary guilt? To provide some background, Dave is a coworker and they've been friends for a while. Dave is openly gay and we've met several times and I never had any problems with him. We seem to get along quite well. A few months ago, an unusual situation occurred. Dave and my boyfriend live on the same street. After a night out with their colleagues, they were dropped off at Dave's house. From there, my boyfriend planned to walk home. I had been texting my boyfriend that night and received his message at 3 a.m. that he was heading home. I was already asleep by then. When I woke up the next morning, I noticed a message sent at 5 a.m. stating he had just gotten home. I found this peculiar because his walk home from Dave's is only about 30 minutes. However, I thought he might have just forgotten to reply earlier. When he woke up, I asked him about his night and the time he arrived home. He said that since everyone was being dropped off by the same Uber, it took him about an hour to get home. This explanation didn't align with the 5 a.m. message. When I asked if he had stayed over at Dave's, he denied it and didn't offer any explanation for the missing hour. I found his responses unusual and could sense he was withholding something, but I decided not to press the issue further. On our next date night, he finally admitted that he hadn't been entirely truthful about that night. He explained that while he was walking home, Dave, who had already returned home since the Uber dropped them at his house, suddenly started running after him. He said that Dave told him he had strong feelings for him that had been ongoing for an unknown amount of time, and that he was interested in starting something with him. My boyfriend was really surprised and reminded him that he was straight and had a girlfriend who he'd already introduced to Dave. Dave asked if any part of him would be interested in exploring a relationship, and my boyfriend declined. I wasn't extremely upset by this story, other than being a bit bothered that he tried to proposition him that night. But I confronted him about why he didn't just tell me this happened, instead of keeping it a secret for a few days. He said he thought I might get upset, and when I asked him why I would be, he ended up revealing more about the situation. Apparently, while Dave was declaring his love, he was also seizing the opportunity to berate me. Dave doesn't know me very well, but as I mentioned before, our interactions up to that point had been pleasant. He was telling my boyfriend that I didn't deserve him and that he could do much better than me, among other things. This naturally upset me and I felt extremely disrespected. Not only did he try and convince my boyfriend to be unfaithful to me, but the comments he made were also extremely insulting. Dave and my boyfriend ended up having an hour-long conversation in the rain. He jokingly referred to it as the most romantic thing anyone's ever done for him. But I don't really know how vigorously my boyfriend defended me, or made it clear that this type of dialogue isn't acceptable to him. He definitely ended the conversation though. Since then, I felt very uncomfortable with my boyfriend and Dave's friendship. I don't want to be the type of girlfriend that has a problem with any of her boyfriend's friends, but I felt like Dave had crossed a line. However, they are constantly together because they work with each other, and my boyfriend spends a lot of time with his work colleagues on days off, etc. The problem is that my boyfriend made plans with his friends, including one who has expressed deep feelings for him, on our anniversary. He spent an entire night with one friend, Dave, who came over to create his character for a game of D&D. My boyfriend initially made it seem like a group would be involved, but it was only Dave. They were together until 4 a.m., even though he'd said it wouldn't be a long night. He also mentioned that he would be seeing Dave again tonight. This situation has upset me. Regardless of whether my boyfriend is not interested in Dave, it feels like he's entertaining someone who doesn't respect our relationship. I'm uncomfortable with him spending one-on-one time with someone who has strong feelings for him and has been disrespectful towards me. I'm considering talking to my boyfriend about this, but I'm unsure of what to say. Should I address this issue? My boyfriend called me as soon as he got home from the D&D game, and we dove into a serious conversation. I'd been thinking a lot about the situation after reading everyone's perspectives, and I think I caught him off guard with my assertiveness. I expressed my discomfort with him and Dave spending time alone until 4 a.m., especially considering they were intoxicated. He seemed surprised, not realizing this would bother me so much, and asked for clarification. I explained that it was unacceptable for him to spend almost the entire night with Dave, who has openly expressed an interest in him and disrespected our relationship. I emphasized the need for boundaries with Dave. He responded by downplaying Dave's admission of feelings, stating it happened months ago and was not serious. He insisted that he did not reciprocate Dave's feelings. I argued that regardless of his interpretation, the situation felt serious and disrespectful to me. We discussed the hypothetical of a girl in the same situation, and I argued that the same boundaries should apply. He disagreed, stating that the potential for attraction or sexual activity exists in the latter scenario, but not with Dave. I countered by saying the potential always exists, regardless of his sexual orientation, particularly considering Dave's open desire for him and their drunken state. I was troubled by the idea that he would spend time alone with Dave until early morning, given Dave's disregard for me and our relationship. He said he understood my point of view, but insisted it wasn't like that, and that Dave's late stay was unplanned. When I asked him to recount the night's events, he explained that they lost track of time while working on his D&D character, FaceTiming a coworker, and discussing music. I questioned how he could lose track of time to such a degree, especially as I had texted him late in the evening. He took offense when I labeled the situation as sketchy, interpreting it as a lack of trust. He admitted surprise at the lateness and insisted he asked Dave to leave as soon as he realized the time. He maintained that he thought Dave's feelings for him had subsided and that their friendship had returned to normal. I argued that things can't go back to normal after such an admission and that boundaries are necessary. He mentioned that he had distanced himself from Dave initially, except for work-related events. He said they hadn't spent time alone together for about 2 months. I was doubtful but couldn't recall specific instances to challenge him. He admitted that their friendship had felt awkward and that Dave had apologized a few weeks ago. He said he had decided to forgive and forget. I insisted that while he could forgive, he shouldn't forget. I was upset that he didn't tell me about his conversation with Dave, which led to an argument about his tendency to withhold information. I have always made it clear to my boyfriend that I would immediately inform him if anyone made advances towards me. For instance, a friend of mine, whom we'll call Bill, once touched me inappropriately during a night out and confessed his feelings for me to my best friend. I informed my boyfriend about this incident on the very same night, even though he was on vacation. This was because I knew I would see Bill at 2 upcoming group events, including New Year's Eve. I had invited my boyfriend to both of these events. However, my boyfriend tried to deflect the situation by claiming he wasn't aware that Bill had verbally expressed his feelings for me. He suggested that I had only mentioned that I suspected Bill had a crush on me. He implied that this was a similar situation to his and Dave's, which I found ridiculous. I accused him of trying to find a loophole to justify his own behavior. I asked him if he would be comfortable with me spending an entire night with Bill while intoxicated. He stated that he would not be, but he believed the situation was different, especially since the incident with Bill was more recent. I countered his argument by saying that by his logic, it would be okay for me to do the same after a few weeks or months had passed. We continued going back and forth a bit. He apologized for causing my upset and discomfort, and said that it was never his intention. He just genuinely believed the whole situation with Dave was behind them. He also apologized if he came off defensive. He said maybe he's been naive, but he really did not believe that Dave still had any feelings for him, or ulterior motives in spending time with him. He also said that it's become more difficult for him now that Dave is his supervisor because he essentially controls all his shifts and holidays, etc., and that if he alienates him, it might impact all of that. He asked me if I want him to cut off Dave for good because he's not sure how he can do that given his work situation and the fact that they often do group gatherings and events. He said it's kind of sad because Dave had been a good friend to him and they get along. I told him that if Dave was a good friend, he wouldn't have put him in this position, and that all of this is a consequence of what Dave did. This isn't something I wanted to happen. I've always wanted to have a good relationship. This story highlights the complexity of relationships and the impact that friendship dynamics can have on romantic partnerships. It emphasizes the importance of communication, trust, and setting boundaries in maintaining a healthy relationship. The protagonist is faced with a difficult situation where she must balance her own feelings with the realities of her boyfriend's work and social life. It also underscores the importance of respecting one's partner and their relationship, even when external influences may pose challenges. If you enjoyed today's stories, check out the other videos on your screen now. Submit your own stories at you'rethejerk.com. Subscribe now, or you're definitely the jerk.